5:06, I believe, on September the 20th, 2018. This is the El Paso Central Appraisal District Board of Directors regular meeting. And I'll call the roll. Al?
Here.
Velarde? Ronnie Lowenfield?
Here.
Laurie Searles here. Sam Trimble?
Present.
Vince Pettis?
Here.
Mike Rosales? He won't be able to be with us this evening. He had an emergency meeting. Gary Gondura won't be able to be with us. He had an emergency meeting also. They apparently had some school damage. And Chuck Taylor, not here either. He'll be out for a while. He'll be at home. And with that, how about the pledge to the flag, guys? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. So with that, we'll be at agenda item 1, public comment. Do we have anyone signed up this evening?
No, ma'am, we do not.
Okay. So take us to number 2, approval and signing of the minutes from August 17th, 2018. Any questions, comments? Thank you.
Second.
So Commissioner Pettis moved to approve and Mr. Lowenfield seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes. The next one will be the review and approval of our financial reports. Ms. Rosa Goldman.
Good evening, Rosa Goldman, Chief Financial Officer. We are presenting the financial report for the month of July 2018. The report contains the balance sheet, report of revenues, expenditures, and changes in cash balance, investment report, and the note to the financial report. For this month of July, we have, again, the one account over budget. It is the supplemental help and temporary by $2,973.60. And then under the encumbered funds, litigation reserve, for the month of July, we used again $32,359.62, giving us a balance of $328,742.39. Are there any questions?
Ms. Goldman, I have a comment. We're seeing that our health care has got...
The healthcare is the next report that we are going to show.
So we can see in this, as we've seen in previous reports, that
yes,
there are...
Yes, it's the next item on the agenda.
Thank you. Any questions about the report? No? We've got here for approval. Do I have a motion to approve?
Move to approve.
Thank you. Commissioner Pettis moved to approve, and Mr. Trimble seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any against? Motion passes. The next is number 4, our monthly health benefit and dental insurance plan report.
The report that you have right next to it. Well, for the month of July, we had deposits of $124,473. Claims paid $122,996, giving us a balance of $415,543.04 as of July 31st. Is that where you had a question, Ms. Searles?
No, it answered it. Thank you very much.
Do you know where it was this time last year?
It was about the same. It has stayed pretty steady, but I could have brought you that information. You can see this fiscal year, from October to July, it varies. I guess the lowest has been $414 and the highest $595 on the balance.
Are there any other questions, comments? And I think this is just for report, not approval. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
That'll take us to number 5, discussion and possible action regarding the Texas Municipal League TML casualty insurance policy approval. And we have in our backup material. Ms. Kilgore has provided us with a comparison chart here and some notes that might address some questions that you would have. And with that said, I guess you can see what, what our current is, what the proposals are, and what the differences in each plan are. Are there any questions or comments?
Madam Chairman, we do have two gentlemen here. From TML, we have Jeff Trinker, and from TAC, we have Victor Uvaye. If you have any questions, if you'll notice on the proposals that we've put out there, and I gave you some information regarding the differences. The biggest difference with the travelers, they were high on everything other than the workman's comp. We're concerned about that being so low. It was a soft number. It was not a hard quote, whereas TML and TAC were hard quotes. They didn't include the expense modifier, and they didn't include the class code under travelers. If you like a recommendation from the appraisal district, we are recommending to stay with TML. TML offers extra courses, the driving courses. As you know, we are an appraisal company, and so we have a lot of people out in the field driving. They have responded very quickly, very efficiently, very accurately whenever we have had any type of a claim. They do our drivers training at no extra cost. We bring other taxing entities in to the district that they represent so that they can also get their drivers training. So there is a lot of, that we do get from TML. TAC did have a fairly close quote. Our only concern with TAC, you saw in the backup about the different expiration dates. So, but a recommendation, I was told from last meeting that you guys, the board would appreciate a recommendation, and we are recommending TML.
Any questions?
Do you know offhand how many claims, but auto liability, physical damage claims we made in the last year?
Oh, just a small amount. Fender bender. We had someone that backed into us. Our biggest claim was 3 years ago when we had a big accident, and TML took care of it immediately. We called them on it. They stepped up to the plate. They dealt with the police. They dealt with the other insurance company, and they handled it all. And then they kept us aware of what was happening. That was we've only had one really big claim, and that was 3 years ago.
So this might be a question for you or maybe TML, if they have representatives, but is that, with minimal claims, is it pretty standard in this world to see a 25% increase?
It's because we have new vehicles.
Additional vehicles?
And additional. Remember, we picked up 3 new vehicles this year, so the increase there in the auto, we did pick up 3 new vehicles, and then, of course, the insurance on the new vehicles is a little more. Also, this is where y'all's liability comes from for the board of directors, is from this policy. So you are covered for any type of liability.
Right. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? If not, do we have a motion to approve?
So moved.
So there is a motion to approve the Texas Municipal League Casualty Insurance Policy approval by Mr. Velarde, seconded by Commissioner Pettis. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Against? Hearing none, motion passes.
I do want to thank TAC and Travelers for submitting a bid. TAC was very good to work with, so I did want to thank them.
It is, thank you very much. It is 5:15 and Mr. Rosales has just joined us. Good evening, sir.
For being late. I'm sorry.
Right.
No problem. We're just getting started. We are on item agenda number 6. Okay, and that would be discussion and possible action regarding a resolution to encumber funds for the litigation reserve. Ms. Kilgore?
Yes, ma'am. As the board, those of you that have been on the board before, you know when the appraisal district came in with a ruling from the Attorney General that allows the appraisal districts to have, we're not allowed to have a savings account or rainy day fund or anything like that that carries over, but we are allowed to have a reserve for a specific purpose. So we created a litigation reserve, and because of the number of lawsuits, and at the time, because of the potential high dollar lawsuits, we created a reserve that would stay at $400,000, so that it would add to our line item of $465,000. We are currently now, for the 17-18 budget, in the reserve already. We've spent, as you saw in the report, close to $72,000, and we still have 2 more months that's going to come out of that reserve. So what we're asking for in the funds that we will have left over to redistribute back to the entities, we're looking at about close to what we had last year, about $900,000, plus or minus. We don't know exactly because we still have 2 months worth of bills that are coming up. So what we're asking for is out of that to take $200,000 to put back in the reserve, so that we can stay at that $400,000. It may take us a little over, but I'd rather be a little over than under. We do have Joe Longoria that will be talking to the board members in the executive session regarding what we're seeing in the way of the large number of lawsuits that are being filed from the smaller valued properties here. It's kind of a turnaround we're seeing. So we want to keep that balance at $400,000. So we're asking to encumber $200,000 to add to it to make sure we have that $400,000 in the reserve going into the 18-19 budget year.
Yes, sir.
I just have a question regarding, correct me if I'm wrong, you have in the litigation reserve, you have $328,000, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then you want to add another $200,000?
Right, we're going to be spending close to another probably $71,000.
Okay.
So, because we have 2 months that have a lot of activity.
Okay.
So that's where we're asking. I don't want to just say 150 and then we end up with 300 and something thousand. The 400,000, when you add it to what we have, like I said, we're already into it, and we've been into the reserve for May, June, and July, and of course August and September. So 5 months out of the year, we've already had to use the current reserve. So I don't want to deplete it any more than the 400,000.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion?
I move.
Go ahead. Thank
Move
you.
that we move $200,000 to ensure the minimum balance of $400,000.
Thank you, Mr. Rosales. In a second.
Second.
Thank you very much. We have a motion made by Mike Rosales and a second by Commissioner Pettis to encumber funds for the litigation reserve in the amount of $200,000. All in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Against? Hearing none, motion passes. That would take us to number 7, discussion and possible action regarding a resolution to encumber funds for health care reserve.
Sorry, I was getting some information from Mr. Stone. We got some information for Mr. Pettis. On this one, what we're asking to do is, you saw our health fund down into the 400,000 range. We've met with our health care provider, and the industry standard when you're in a self-insured fund is to have between $800,000 and $1 million in reserves to be able to utilize in case you had some type of a large catastrophe. We do have stop loss, so we do have that available. Last year in July, in 2017, Commissioner Pettis, we had $635,000 in our reserve fund. What we were asking for, being as we're about $415,000, if we add $300,000 from the monies that will be going back, that puts us at $700,000. It's a little bit healthier. It's closer to where we were last July at $635. I'm sorry, $635 going forward. This number is fluid. If y'all feel like it could be another number that would allow us to at least build that up a little bit. Every so many years, we do like to come in and build that up so that it makes it a very healthy healthcare fund. At 1 year, Commissioner Pettis and Ms. Searles, I think you remember, we got down to like 34,000.
Yes, I do.
And we were really worried about that. So we want to keep it a healthy fund, and we've been able to get back up there, and we want to keep it that way. So that's why we're requesting in item number 7 to encumber funds to go into the healthcare.
What is the stop loss currently?
The stop loss is $1 million. For all closing.
We have
Two-
for one individual claim and then for all of them.
Well, it's actually $2 million for stop loss and all the other claims. That's the max that we have. We are with TML Healthcare. We have a 3-year contract with them. This is the last of the 3-year contracts. So going next year in 2019, we'll be coming to the board with different proposals for different companies. But again, going into next year, if we're going to go out for proposals, we want a healthy fund. If you've got a fund that is unfunded or lower funded, it's going to be harder to get a company that will come in and give us a decent rate. We have a really good rate now with them. So we're just trying to put a little more money in there.
How many full-time employees are there on the plan currently?
We have 140 full-time employees. Well, right now we're about 137.
I noticed in July we deposited significantly more. Looking at the right page at the end,
We deposit.
124,000, whereas the previous months were all running
Yes, because
in the 88s.
there was a stop loss reimbursement check that came in.
Yes, I forgot about that.
Are these deposits? Are these employee responsibilities? What are the deposits? Where are the
No,
deposits coming from?
the way our insurance handles it is 100% paid by the appraisal district because we are so small. We pay, but the spouses and the children have to be paid by the employee at the full amount. We don't pay anything for spouse or children, but we do pay the entire insurance. That's kind of a standard, industry standard in appraisal districts to be able to get insurance because we do have so few. We do get rebates on the stop loss. Like Rosa said, we got a rebate in July on that one. So
where are these deposits coming
from the appraisal district.
Okay, so
The 85,000?
right.
Yes.
Okay, so we're putting that money in, but where do we get that money from?
That's part of our budget. That's in our budget. And we do a quarterly payment. So what we've set up with TML is we are responsible for the plan financing. So we have the account. The money goes into that, and then TML takes the funding out of that to pay for whatever claims or what have you. But we handle it instead of paying an outsider to do it. We do that ourselves. So all that money that's in there is from the budget.
So I think it might kind of be important to explain a little bit of how this type of insurance works, because this doesn't sound like, I don't know that we're all familiar with the exact way that this is functioning. So this doesn't sound like what I would have at my company. This is not.
We're considered self-insured. So
as far as the process, because I mean, if we're sitting here asking, well, where do these deposits come from? Are they paying for them, or is this part of the budget? Obviously, we need some clarification on how this.
In a self-funded plan, we pay for it. A self-funded plan, because we are not part of a larger group like a school district or a city or a county municipality. We have a small number of people. We've tried before to piggyback with somebody, but when we've tried that, we still have to come up with our own plan. So it doesn't work to work with the city or with the county, because we still have to have our own plan and we have to pay our own. So under self-insured, we have a broker that goes out, and the broker will look at the different companies that will take us, because we're only 140 people. So there are only so many companies that will take us. So with TML, we found that we are now part of a larger group. So with that larger group, we were able to get at least a little bit better of a rate. This happened back in 2002, where we changed from a third-party provider to, it's in the financial statement that you guys get, in the audit that you guys get in January, that we gave you guys in January, and they came in, so the explanation of that is in there. And so what we do before, what happened is the payment, the monthly payment that covered everybody, was made to a third-party provider, and then that third-party provider would pay the claims. Well, now we pay from the appraisal district funds that are budgeted, and we pay into a healthcare fund. So we're basically our own third-party provider. But it's just like it always has been. It's just turned around that we do the banking instead of a third-party provider doing the banking. But before, we still made those, $85,000 a month payments into the plan, and then the claims are paid from that plan. Does that help at all, David?
We also have reinsurers, and that's where the stop loss comes in. If an individual claim is over a certain dollar amount, then the reinsurer will pay the overage, and we only have to pay up to the limit on the stop loss. We also have an aggregate stop loss that if all the claims for the month get above a certain dollar amount, then the reinsurer pays the overage. And that's why we had that 124 in July, because we got reimbursed for stop loss because of high claims on the account. So we're still buying insurance in a way, but basically we have a huge deductible for the district itself, and we're paying everything up to a certain point. And then if it ever goes past a certain point, then the reinsurer will step in and pay the overage, so that we're limited in our liability for the district. The district went to the self-insured because we used to be fully insured with like regular insurance companies, but we were getting hit with too big of an increase on the premiums every year. And since we've gone to self-insurance, our premiums are a lot lower than when we were paying for outside insurance. And every once in a while, our broker brings us quotes from someone that wants to come in and provide full insurance again. And the self-insurance quotes that we get are always lower than what a full insurer would provide to us. And
when you say us, you mean the district
the
itself, or
district,
you mean
the district.
individuals?
No,
The
the
district.
yeah.
The district.
And one
So how
of the
does this
things,
affect the premiums for individuals then, once it went from a regular?
Well, because they still go through an actuarial process, and they estimate like how much the district is going to spend during the year. So they tell us, okay, your costs are, this is how much we think that you're going to be spending out of pocket, not counting the stop loss. Then this is how much your premium is going to be with the reinsurer to cover the stop loss. And so this is how much you need to put in every month to keep your plan funded. And that's what these $87,000 every month are. It's us putting the money into the health fund plus us paying the premium basically for the reinsurer. So that's what's covered there. Now, the thing about the health fund is once we put the money in the health fund, the only thing it can be used for is health stuff. We can't take the money out for any other reason. It's
right, that's
the way the government sets up the funds, it can only be used for health care.
It's kind of like a glorified HSA, except for a public entity or
Yeah,
something.
right,
So
yes.
my
And
last,
what we found, before I'm sorry for interrupting you, what we found is we've done, every year that we have come before the board, we do a study of all the entities here in El Paso. And we have found that the rate that we pay per employee is less than what the entities pay, plus when you add in what their employees have to pay. Our rate is usually a couple $100 less than the total of those two. So it's a very, very healthy and it's a very reasonable rate.
okay, and I guess just my last question would be, is there any type of, health and wellness programs going on or anything?
Yes.
Because I know if I averaged out my, our employees at that, and it was that per month in claims being paid, to where we're pushing $1,000 a month per person in claims, if you averaged it out, like that's a problem.
Yeah, no, we do. Well, we've had a couple of catastrophic,
Right.
and I can't get into it, but we've
course
had
not,
some. But we do have, in fact, October 1, we're having our big wellness fair. They're coming in, and they give flu shots for free to the employees. They also do what they call biometric testing. They do lab work. You can have your blood drawn.
This is TML you're talking about?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and then throughout the year we have health seminars and webinars that they can attend. Yeah.
Thank you.
I've got a couple of questions, and I don't want to sound like I'm the bad ugly guy. But in today's environment of insurance, but I got to ask, how rich is this plan? Because I got to ask, can we afford the richness of the plan? So when it comes to the health plan, what are the benefits that our employees are getting, deductibles, their copay coverage? Is that kind of equal to what we can expect,
Yes.
I guess, majority of providers, or are they getting a very good plan and we're trying to fund a very good plan in an environment where?
And we're not talking about, the plan is set for another year, we're just wanting to put some money encumbered, but the plan, we have a $1,500 deductible. We do have a very, very good prescription plan. If you do generic, it's like $5. If you don't do generic, it goes $30, $60, and $90. Your copay for your what is it, urgent care is $50. So it's pretty standard industry-wise with the 1,500. Now, for the spouses that pay, it's a little bit higher, but they have to pay their own families and spouses. We have about five people do that.
Family coverage is, or child coverage?
Family
I
coverage.
think family coverage is $900 a month. And it's whether it's your spouse or your kids only, or your spouse or your kids. There's no.
Well, it's
there's no
1,080,
difference.
I believe. 1,080.
So it's just one. I mean, just for perspective, I mean, my organization, it's double that. And
Yeah, we have it's a very good plan. It's very healthy and it's a very good plan. It's very.
I just want to make sure that, because you're asking, because in the previous action, we took $300,000.
$500,000.
Sorry?
Yeah, this would be
We're taking $500,000 away from monies that are supposed to be going back to the entities.
Right, about 450,000, you know, if we have
What you're
about,
asking for.
we have about like what we had last year, we had about 993,000 that went back, and we took out, you know, the 400,000. So you had about 553,000 that went back to the entities. If you think about it, for EPISD, that's about 22%. So you're looking at about 100,000 that would go back to EPISD.
Pennies on the dollar,
The city. County would be less because of the percentage they pay into. We're just, you don't have to prove this. We were just trying to make it a little bit healthier.
If we were to, what happens if you were to run out of money?
We'll have to come back to the board and all the entities and try to
An
pull money
emergency
from someplace
request.
else in the budget. And that happened,
That's right.
that was real tight one time. We got down to about
We did.
$47,000.
It was low.
Yeah, and that was with that wasn't with TML, that was with somebody else. TML has been real strong the last 2 years that we've been with them.
Hang on, and I don't think there's a problem if we wanted to do 100,000. Is there, or 150?
No, any
It doesn't
amount.
have to be.
Anything is helpful. Anything is helpful.
Okay, please, Ron.
Do you know the last time
You don't have to do anything.
we approved, or you requested, or we approved an additional any amount to the existing reserves?
To the reserve, it was when we were with another provider, and it was about 4 years, 2015, 4 years ago.
And do you know the amount? Do you recall?
It was 100,000.
100,000. Okay.
Yeah.
And last, when you're speaking of the comparisons to other organizations or entities, or when you do an analysis of this and you say that our rates are better and everything else, does that include, like, basically in this additional $300,000 that we're
right.
pouring into this deal? Or I guess I'm just thinking, you know, anybody could say, yeah, hey, this is the best program, and then, you know, a couple of years in, be like, well, we need the equivalent of 5 months of additional funds.
What
in
you're
here to
seeing
make-
is the additional funds is because we have had a couple of catastrophic issues, and with a small company, your small organization like ours, it really hits it hard when you have those. So that makes a big difference. When we get ready next year, we'll actually ask the chairman to put a committee together, and we'll be looking at the proposals that'll be coming in. We'll be looking at the comparables. We'll do a comparable amongst appraisal districts and the local entities, realizing that the entities are 6,000, anywhere from 3,000 to 6,000 employees, you know, but we'll be doing that when we go in. Usually we start doing that, our broker starts going out in July and August, and so August we try to have a report to the board with the comparables. So that'll happen next August. And so all this will be taken into consideration at that time and added to it.
Okay, and here it says the industry standard recommends keeping close to 800,000 in reserve. That's according to our size, that's the recommendation, or that's just kind of across the board?
I think
a
that was just
general-
across the board, and we felt like that was a little too much to try to encumber.
Uh-huh.
As you know, last year we were about 635 in July of 17. My thoughts are if we can stay between the 6 and 700,000, that's a very healthy plan for our size and for what we're seeing in the way of claims.
And last, you mentioned the benefit that we could get in rates or premiums from having a higher reserve. Can you monetize that, or is that just kind of a general statement?
I think that's just a general statement. When we get into it, we'll be able to see how it affects the rates. Some of the companies won't even go out to bid on us, like Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't have anything to do with us, several others. And some of them have told us in the past, your reserves are so low, it's going to take so much to build it up. So we're going to go in with a higher rate. This is just from historical, what we've seen in the past. I don't know what will happen next year. I can only tell you what we've been told in the past when we've gone out.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm still
Yes,
thinking on this. So, because I'm looking at this last sheet, and I guess my question, because it looks like we are continually, based on the trend that I see from October to July, we're continually paying in less than the claims that we're paying out. Okay? And I'm looking at this last sheet.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess the question I have to ask, obviously, what we're saying is that the deposits are the budgeted deposits that we are putting in monthly. Do these deposits also include the family fees
Yes.
that are paid? Okay.
Yes.
So then it just leads me, because how long can we sustain this before we have to make a decision like all other employees are doing and say there's got to be an employee responsibility to it?
And that'll be something that we'll have to discuss next year.
And I hate to bring that news up, but the fact of the matter is,
Well, it can be sustained. That's why we're asking for.
Well, and that'll
like
be
it-
something that, going into next year
I mean-
with the renewal, will be something that we'll bring to the board, one versus the other.
The monthly payments are determined by the insurance company based on their actuarial table, so their estimates. So we just happen to have higher than rate, and this year we've had higher than normal claims than what we usually see. So we're underwater this year basically, and that's why we're coming to you, because you can see we've had a net loss in the fund balance of about $180,000 over the past year, which is not normal. And we're not the ones that are determining what the monthly deposits are. The insurance companies are the ones that are telling us this is how much you should be putting away every month. So now we're concerned because, like you, we see the trend that we've been out paying more than we're paying in. Now, the insurance company, when they renew us in October, they're going to look at our claims history and our actuarial history and everything else, and they'll determine whether or not we're going to stay at the $87,000 a month, or if they're going to want more money to be put in to keep the plan viable. And so, I mean, it's going to reset. The rates reset every year depending on what our claims history is and on what the actuarial results are from the insurance company.
I'd like to make a comment too. A couple of years ago in the school district, we were at this point. Oh no, what do we do? Do we make everybody pay more, all the employees? Or do we realize that this is a bad year? And I don't mean bad in a bad way, but it was a high claims year, and it happens. It's a cyclical thing, and you'll have years where there are high claims. For whatever reason, it's just a big year, and your funds go down. We chose to infuse $1 million into the fund balance for our health care. It was wonderful. Everybody was real scared to do it because we didn't have any money at the time. But we did it, and naturally, the next year you're fine. You've now got a bigger balance. Things come around. The drawdown on it is, in my experience, and I've been through it twice with where that happens, where it just there's a lot of claims in that year. And I don't think that it's showing us that this really can't sustain itself as it looks like here. I think it's just, am I correct in saying this, Dinah, that we've just had a year of high claims?
We had
And-
we had 3 very large claims that went into stop loss. And as you see on these numbers, we really only have August and September left in this year. So we would be all right at the 415 for the rest of this year and going into next year. We just thought, you know, in talking with our insurance provider, that they would like to see a little bit healthier reserve. Again, we don't have to. We can leave it alone, and then if something comes up.
Which does not that play into next year's rates, that if the reserve is healthier, the rates could be affected by
Right.
that directly? Okay, yes, Ms.
My question, though, on that point,
Yes,
because with general insurance, when you have a large claim, it sticks with you for 3 years. It doesn't go away next year. Now, I don't know if that's the case with a self-insured plan, so answer that for me. But
I don't think so.
I know, for example, my company just got off of that because we had a claim that was 3 years ago, and this year it finally fell off.
No, they don't, it doesn't carry for 3 years,
And-
but what it does do is they look at it and see what type of a claim. Was it a one-time accident type of a claim where there was some form of an accident? Then it's a one-time claim, then it's done. So that it doesn't carry over. If it is a claim for a progression type of a, then yes, they would look at what is the status of that progression. So it is that answer, Mr. Velarde, unfortunately, is yes and no. So no, if it's a one, they do look at it. If it's a one-time thing, then it won't affect it. But if it is somebody that is on a long term,
Sam, did you have another
So
question?
the renewal is when?
it'll be next October 1
Okay.
of 2019.
So, a couple things. We have a meeting next month, November.
Mhm.
So, realizing that we'll be all right, as you just said, I mean, if nothing else, I would almost want to table so I can see August numbers. Because if we're not up for renewal yet, then we're not
Oh.
necessarily going to take a hit.
Okay, we can't.
Okay, if we
This-
can't
okay.
table, then I'm going to move that we
Yeah, let
deny
me
this.
tell you, let me explain on encumbered funds.
Mhm.
If we decide to keep any funds, they have to be done by the beginning of our fiscal year, which is October 1. So this would be the only time. So if you're not comfortable with it, then don't do it. We can't come back and ask for
Okay,
encumbered
so
funds.
to
It's a
finish,
one-time.
I guess my question/statement, to me, this seems like this is kind of a proactive measure, which is usually a good
Yes.
thing, except when we have to go back to our entities and look at what that number is. And so if the renewal is not impending, and there would be an opportunity later before renewal to infuse money if necessary to
There-
make sure.
No,
There
there's
won't be
not.
an opportunity. This is it. If something happens.
Next year, there won't be an
No, for
opportunity.
next year, for the 19 renewal in 19.
Yeah, so our
going-
fiscal
yeah.
year is going to end soon.
Our fiscal year will be October 1, so what's in the budget right now and whatever reserve we have left over after the other months, that will carry over into the 18-19 budget year. So if we only have 415,000 now, that's what we're going to have going into October of 2018 and the 19 budget. So that'll be our base that we'll be starting with going into that year. We will not be able to encumber any more funds because once the end of this month is, that's it. Whatever's left over, the auditors come in, they start going over our books, they see what money's left, and then they see what's credited back to the taxing entities. What would happen then is we would just have to really monitor on a month-to-month basis, and if we see that we're really, like we did before, we were struggling, like that's what happened back in 2015 when we put the 100,000 in.
So would y'all feel comfortable cutting that in half?
My personal opinion on it right now is I think we have time. And if we can address this in the next budget cycle,
But I think what I'm hearing from Ms. Kilgore is there is no
not for
time.
this budget.
It's
for this
it's
cycle.
now or never,
cycle,
and
yeah.
so
Right,
we've
but
got a
in the
whole
next
year
fiscal
that
year,
this has got to pay
We
for
have a year to
everybody.
address it, right?
Well,
And
in
if
the
it doesn't pay for everybody, it's bad times.
October 1 is our fiscal year, so this is what we have going
Right,
into that.
going in. But after October 1, can we not come back and discuss this?
No.
We wouldn't be able to do it until we start working on the budget in the spring for the following year, which would be the 1920 year, and that's when we'll be going in for re-rates and getting a quotes on the healthcare at that time, because this contract's good through the end of this. So if we don't do anything right now, then what we have is what we have going for a whole year.
Point here, if we were to maintain this 400 and whatever it is, then when we go out to bid, that's going to have an impact on the rates. Am I correct?
Yes.
Based on your reserve. So
Very well could. We've seen that in the past. They always look to see how healthy are you, what kind of reserve are you.
In 10 months, I'm looking at the trend. In 10 months, we've seen a loss of 100, if I do my math right, about $180,000. So if that trend continues,
In a year of high claims,
yeah,
In a year of high claims, yes.
it's down 180. So if we have another year of high claims equivalent to this year, we'd be down
80, but we would
180.
still then be
And
at
we would
about
still have a
200,000.
cushion.
So you'd be about another 180 minus the 415, because basically
Yes.
what we're doing now is we're just replacing the claims. We're not building it back up again. We are paying the claims, and it's not. I mean, we're not at a dire strait or anything, but we want to be proactive. So.
At the same trend, let's say $200,000 is spent over the next 10 months, which is about the time we'd probably be going to discuss it. We'd be down to $200,000, probably a low balance, obviously, but there's still money there at this trend. With this trend, and that's all I have to see here. But I've got to say, when we do sit down and start talking about it, we really have to take a look at that plan and what's paying out, because I just can't see us continuing to pull money out from what should be going back to the entities in order to pay something if we're underpaying. And so that's my position on it right now.
Yeah, I think if an insurance company was holding this, they would be making some serious adjustments. I think it's an issue of premiums and deposits that we're having here, and I know they're doing their best with all their actuarial tables, and I know it was high claims, and I understand all of that, but I guess my concern too is just we're putting a Band-Aid on cancer in a sense, or a program that's not working. And I know it's going to renew, and I know we're going to get new rates, and hopefully that fixes the issue. And I know we haven't done this since 2015, but even a year of high claims, if we've only seen it drop 180 or 200,000, I think we still have funds. I think it still is a safe zone. I think the only argument that would sway me in a direction to give any money is the benefit that we're going to see in rates if we do have a healthier.
But at this time, it's an if, right? It's not, or a possibility, not a.
Well, it's a
Definitely.
possibility. We don't know what's going to happen because we won't even start going out for re-rates. Our broker will start going out in July and August, or July, to get re-rates and from the company. So we still have got 10 months, of doing that. So it's not an unhealthy plan. We are healthy. The numbers are okay. We were just trying to be proactive. So what the direction?
I mean, I don't think this trend. I don't think you can say that this is a healthy. I don't think that you could say anybody would say that the deposits as they exist with the claims as they have existed would say that this is sustainable or healthy. I think we have to. I mean, you'd have to see an increase. That's how insurance works.
Yeah. Well, and that's throughout. I mean, that's industry standard. That's
For
everywhere.
sure. Yeah,
That's
yeah.
everywhere. It's not
I
just
agree
us,
with
yeah.
that.
Yeah, it's just what's happening with insurance everywhere.
Exactly, and I agree.
Okay, so we beat this dead horse up pretty bad. What do you guys want to do?
I think for now, I want to move to deny the request.
Second that.
So a motion made and seconded to deny the request to encumber funds for the healthcare reserve. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Motion was made by Mr. Velarde, seconded by Mr. Trimble. So our next one, number 8, discussion and possible action regarding the RFQ for appraisal services. And we have 3 people who have responded to our RFQ, and I'd like to take them in alphabetical order this evening for any presentations they may have. Ms. Kilgore?
Yes, ma'am, they do have presentations. I'd like to introduce From Capital Appraisal Group, Greg Davis is here.
Okay,
From Hugh Landrum, Tracy Foster is here, and from Wardlaw Appraisal Services, Peggy Wardlaw. And so I will start with Craig Davis. Get up and give a presentation. I know the directions from the chairman of the board was to allow them 5 or 10 minutes to give a presentation.
yes.
Y'all received the backup, so you have some basic information. For those of you board members that are new, what we do is our appraisal company, there's 5 in the state of Texas. We hire them to do our large industrial properties, the refineries, the electric company, the pipelines, and this is standard throughout the state. We did receive qualifications from all 3 companies that responded that are here tonight. They all are highly qualified, highly educated, them and their entire staff, and highly regarded in the field here in the state of Texas. We do want to stick with somebody in the state of Texas because they know the state law. So they are very equally qualified. So I'm going to let you visit with them. Yes, sir.
I'm Greg Davis with Capital Appraisal. I've got a number of staff with me here to answer any questions that you may come up with. I'd like to introduce them. George Tertios, he's an engineer, appraiser for us. Got Tilly Renfro, she's a senior appraiser, former chief appraiser at Dimmitt County, lives in Carrizo Springs. I've got Noah Wilcoxon, who is an engineer. He's a principal of the company and head of our industrial division. And Dave Poplar, who's a registered general appraiser for us, our chief engineer. He handles all our refineries that we do for the state of Texas. We do, I believe, 13 out of 22 refineries for property tax purposes. He'll be glad to fill you in if you have any questions with regard to what might happen with regard to the marathon sale of your existing refinery and what you can anticipate in the future. That's always a hot topic here in El Paso. We work for 67 appraisal firms in Texas. We've done work for the state of Colorado Appraisers Association, the state of Kansas Appraisers Association. We also do work for extraterritorial jurisdictions in the city of Beaumont and the city of Port Arthur, Texas. We've got 46 employees. We're based out of Austin, Texas, been around a long time, since the 40s with Latham and Stultz. And we have people that do work out of their houses. The majority of our staff is located in Austin. We have our own camera system. We have our own programmers associated with that. We've recently gone through a rewrite of our appraisal system. Gives the ability to be more efficient in the work that we do and provides transparency to our clients to give Ms. Kilgore the ability to look at any property value at any point in time, see exactly what the value is at that point in time. It gives your taxpayers the ability to go on the internet and see what their appraised values are. And if you so choose, we can put the actual appraisals of the industrial properties there so they can look at it and get in touch with our people through the website, talk directly about their values. They can download the appraisals that will be used in any ARB hearings, so they will be able to get the package. We have a GPS capabilities. Last couple of years, to give you examples of our use of that, it's a geodatabase. Our industrial people take it out into the field. They identify the location of the properties that they're doing inspections on. They can add notes. They can add photos. You have a geo-reference that we can share with your appraisal district so they can check with the land that's associated with these properties. Comes in handy, cell phone towers, things of that nature, so you can identify the properties that may or may not have some revenue associated with those structures. And in one county, when we got their data, we found 500 miles of pipe that had not been ever put on the roll. We're in the process of getting that placed on the roll and supplemented in the past. And then we corrected over 300 erroneous taxing jurisdictions for another county that we took over. So we use that to everybody's advantage. It's very important to make sure that everything is taxable where it should be taxable. And we've got a very good staff dedicated to come up with a market value, which is very important on your industrial properties. You've got, I guess you still got the highest percentage of residential
Yes.
in the state. You still
Yes,
have
we do.
that going on. So you need somebody qualified to get the market value for your industrial properties. We have also electronic capabilities that your taxpayers can go through the internet and execute documents. Those documents are legal in nature. Everybody agrees to it for settlement purposes, and they immediately get a copy. The appraisal district immediately gets a copy, and a copy goes into our document imaging system, which is accessible by the appraisal district. And they can also see any notices that we do for the appraisal district, any sign-offs, any protest, any document associated with the valuation. They can go in and actually look at the documentation if they so choose. She can go in and look at jurisdictional summaries at any point in time and see what the values are at the time, not just a notice value and a final value. She can see live data, and she can run those reports at any point in time, even on a tablet if she wants to, because it's web-based. So, having said that, be happy to answer any questions that you may have. Like I said, Dave's available. He deals with Marathon all the time. He can give you some insight with what their latest trends are and their thoughts on property value situations. Refineries are never fun to talk about, but we have to live with them. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask us. We'll answer the best we can.
Are there any questions?
Yeah, I think I'd like to hear some general comments on it, because that's for us, Westerns, or now Marathon or whatever, Endeavor, whatever is a big property. Any general comments on that and your success with those? Yeah, or he can speak to David's.
Yeah, so you may be familiar with the proposed buyout, so
Please come to the podium. Thank you.
We got to record everything, sorry.
yeah, so it hasn't closed yet. I think it's due to close in October. Shareholders are going to vote next week, I believe, on the merger. Marathon and Endeavor, I keep thinking of them as Tesoro, but I guess their new name is Endeavor. Yeah, stock and debt transaction. So there's going to be some, obviously, business value there, some intangible value there. It'll be a pretty good challenge, I think, to try to winnow that down to El Paso specific refinery. But they may take a look at, they being Marathon, may take a look at it when they do their accounting for this whole procedure. So we may get some insight from that. But I think in general, what I've seen in refining for the last year or so, in Texas anyway, you've got a lot going on in the Permian, obviously, and then a lot going on out here in the Bone Spring area. And it's kind of akin to the way the market was 3, maybe 4 years ago when the fracking boom started. And there wasn't enough pipeline to get the fracked oil out to market, so to speak, so you had depressed prices in El Paso area, Midland area. So you had folks in this area, refining folks, making pretty good money because they got a discount, basically, on market value of crude. We're kind of seeing a little bit more of that going on because of the activity in the Permian. So, I would anticipate things for the El Paso refinery specifically would probably be better. They're probably pretty good this year, or will be good this year, probably pretty good next year if things continue. So we try to look at all the transaction data. Refineries sell. There's not that many of them in the country, but they do sell on occasion. So I always try to take a look at what indicators you might be able to get from that as well. So I don't know if that answers specific questions or if anybody has any other specific questions.
I would just be curious, and I think for all three at some point, just to talk briefly about your successes as far as standing up your values, standing up to litigation. I know there's a lot of unrelated pieces to that, but there's something to be said for it withstanding some form of litigation, which obviously we're experiencing a lot of here.
Right. When we go into our valuation, our policy is to come up with a value we can defend and what we think is correct. Okay. Obviously, the politically active properties, we're in close communication with the chief appraiser and the staff on those, and so we don't willy-nilly come up with any recommendations one way or the other. We have had our fair share of lawsuits. You deal with refineries, you're going to get lawsuits. But our instructions to our appraisers are to come up with the correct value. Really don't care what that value is, as long as it's the correct value. And then if you get into tough negotiations on some politically sensitive properties, sometimes you need to get in with the lawyers and get with the chief appraiser and see what the business decision is, in addition to the legal decision, in addition to the market value decision on these properties. But all in all, it's what the value of the property is that we can defend. And we go in on day one at notice value, and we feel we can defend that at that point in time. Now, that value may change if we get additional information, which agents have a tendency to give you late in the process, because some will make they make their money on the difference between notice value and final value, so they might withhold information from you. But we know who those characters are, and the other appraisal firms in the room know who those characters are. They're a known quantity. But like I said, we defend it, and we're ready to go to court with our values at any given point in time. We don't play let's make a deal. We don't feel that's fair for anybody.
If I could just add to that, you may hear more of this in executive session. I'm not sure what y'all plan to talk about in regards to your litigation, but typically with refining, the issue is not so much market value as it is equity. So that's typically what you see. I mean, you get crossways or sideways with anybody. They'll file suit on market and equity, but they typically only carry the equity piece forward, and that makes it complicated out here because you don't have another comp in county. So it's kind of two pieces to the puzzle, so to speak.
And the state's going to pick on you a little bit this year because they're adding El Paso Electric to the property value study. Yes. If you know anything about El Paso Electric, 94, 96% of the assets are located in El Paso County, and the rest of them are located in New Mexico, maybe a little bit in Loving. So by choosing this property, they're picking on you guys, and I, let's just say I'm very active in my defense of our values against the property value study. Even this year with the state pointed out to them that when they choose a sampling of one, and they're supposed to do a statistical sampling, you can't do a statistical sampling of one. That doesn't meet any of the definitions. And they backed off of those counties, and those were the little schools. So we felt good about that, and we pointed out to them that they weren't following the property tax code in their allocations on their inventories. And they backed off on those this year. So we feel pretty good about defending our values against the state also.
Any other questions?
No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, gentlemen.
Madam Chairman,
Yes,
and
ma'am.
board members, once everybody gives their presentations, they will still be here in case anybody has a question that they want to bring somebody
Okay.
back up.
Great.
And the next group will be,
Ms. Tracy Foster, Hugh Landrum.
that's the one. Good evening.
Ms. Kilgore and I have known each other for several years through TAAO and other organizations, and I've been invited here to teach class, so I see some familiar faces. But I also brought the president of our company with us, Hugh Landrum Jr. He's our registered professional engineer. We are a registered professional engineering firm. We're a little bit different than some of the other firms because we're smaller. We try to bid on the counties that we feel like are really good fit for us. We don't want to be everything to everybody. We are industrial, mineral, pipeline, utility specialists. Like I said, we are a registered professional firm. We have registered professional engineers on staff. We have a retired state property tax board appraiser. We have RPAs. We have MBAs. And we think that El Paso would be a perfect fit for us. We, too, have been involved in the lawsuits. If you appraise refineries, you're going to be involved in lawsuits. I'm an attorney. my previous life was as a litigation attorney until I came back into the business. I've been back in the business now for 22 years. And I think that's a benefit to all of my clients because not only do they have counsel, but I can see what I can help defend our values from a legal standpoint too. Certainly not representing the district, but protecting the district as much as we can to help defend those values. And so what I'd like to do is turn it over to Hugh Landrum and let him tell you a little bit about our industrial side, and then I want to talk to you about a benefit that we bring in education.
Good evening. Thank you very much for having us here tonight. As Tracy said, we're a registered professional engineering firm that specializes in the appraisal and valuation of complex properties, special use properties, chemical plants, oil refineries, electric power plants, manufacturing facilities, sometimes into specialized commercial facilities such as medical, diagnostic, and treatment facilities. We get into some unusual things, as all of our colleagues out here do, egg farms and salt mines and catfish farms. We work a striped bass farm right now. So there's lots of different properties that we find ourselves involved with. The electric power plants, I know that El Paso Electric is your biggest property owner here, biggest taxpayer here. We work a number of different gas-fired power plants, small gas peaker plants, large gas-fired power plants, lignite-fired power plants, coal-fired power plants, cogeneration power plants, hydroelectric power plants. We work oil refineries. We have been involved in litigation in oil refineries. I have testified as an expert witness in the state of New Mexico in a lawsuit that it was formerly the Holly refinery in New Mexico, and we were hired as an expert witness in that case. Back in the 90s, we worked up in Alaska in a lawsuit as expert witnesses in the valuation appraisal of what formerly was the Tesoro refinery in Kenai, Alaska. Litigation is one of those things, and as I believe you mentioned, there are a lot of moving components in a lawsuit. You have the legal side of it, you have the expert witness side of it, you have the jury side of it, and I have seen juries that do not like appraisal districts, and there's just not much you can do about that. Unfortunately, it happens.
Have you seen people that do like appraisal districts?
What was it called? Voir dire? What is it called when you're interviewing the jurors? Voir dire. I have had an attorney stand up in voir dire and say, who all here has ever filed a protest with the appraisal district? And 3/4 of them raised their hand. How many of you had a good experience with it? None of them raised their hands. How many of you, and believe it or not, this was a year or two after the BP explosion that killed 17 people. How many of you know people that work in an oil refinery? Half the people raise their hand. How many of you people think that BP is a good corporation? 90% of them raise their hand. How many of you trust what the appraisal district does? One of them raised their hand. How many of you like property taxes? None of them raised their hand. How many of you think we should have no taxes? One guy raised his hand. He goes, come on, really? You're kidding me, right? He goes, well, I don't think we should have no taxes, but this is just way too much. So it's a tough game out there. And I'll just put it out there. I've had my butt kicked before in lawsuits. And we win some and we lose some, and some of them get settled. A lot of times we are making recommendations to our chief appraisers. Joe knows this, that you can't, it's your client's decision, and you do the best you can. It's the board's decision. If the board wants to settle something that you feel very strongly about fighting, you settle it. If the board wants to fight something that you feel very strongly about settling, you go fight it. And so there's just a number of things. It's not just me up there all by myself testifying as an expert witness that wins or loses the case. It's a team effort, meaning anyway, I'm going to turn it back over to Tracy. She is going to talk to you a little bit
There's
about.
a couple of things I want to talk about that we're really proud bring to El Paso. One of them is how we enter your data. We actually tie into all of our clients' PACS systems. So El Paso's on PACS system, and it's your computer system. We tie directly in through VPN, and we key our data directly into your system. So it's almost like we're sitting right here in the CAD offices. When Ms. Kilgore wants to run totals, our numbers are in there. When she wants to run notices, our numbers are in there. Our numbers are like her numbers right there in your system. When there's a rendition filed, when there's a sign-off signed, it's scanned and attached in your PACS system. You can see it, we can see it. If a taxpayer comes in and they have questions about something, some of their personal property that the district works, but maybe something we work, the appraisal district can see it real time because we're working directly into your system. And all but 2 of our clients are on the PACS system. It's really one of the easiest, best systems. We have 2 other clients that we still work on other systems, Fort Bend and Morton. But that's something that we're really proud of. Our clients really like that because when it comes time to run totals, run notices, they are in control. They handle all the protests. And the nice thing about it is we do the supplements throughout the year. We're working in your system 365 days. We don't do a data dump and then leave. We're there just as one of your employees. The second thing that I want to tell you about is education. And that's what Ms. Kilgore and I have known each other. I teach lots of classes. I teach for our clients because I'm an attorney. I can teach all the tax law classes. And so that's how I kind of got roped into it, was one led to another. There's 3 courses that every RPA needs every 2 years: USPAP, Laws and Rules, and Ethics. I teach all 3 of those. It takes 1 day. I've come out and taught before here in El Paso. That's something that we do for our clients for free. We don't charge you for that. That's just a service that we give. I teach other courses. I teach the tax law course. I teach the ethics course. I teach the full USPAP course. Some of these courses are multiple day classes. I'm leaving on Monday to go to Austin to teach the RPA review course so that when your appraisers are getting ready to take their level 3 exams or their level 4 exams, I can come out here and teach the group of them and help them prepare for those exams. It's what I do. I do it for TAD, I do it for TAAO, and I do it for our clients. It's a service rather than them paying all that money to send those people to Austin, which I guess for y'all is really far. And I know Ms. Kilgore does a good job of bringing people here.
Well, I'll be honest, we don't do that anymore because we're certified to teach now. So we teach USPAP, ethics. The only course we don't teach is the law and rules that has to be given by an attorney every other year. But all the other courses we teach. We have employees now that are certified to teach.
That's good. That's good.
So, yeah.
What about some of the core courses, like the law class, the 3-day law class?
That has to be taught by attorney. There's 2 courses that have to be taught by attorney: the law and rules, and the law class. Usually, we work with the local lawyer with Purdue, Brandon.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not Purdue, but with Delgado, Costa, Linebarger, and they have an attorney that teaches that.
I could do that
local.
for you. I could do that. So those are benefits that I think people don't think about, but it's that cost of education, and we bring that. So we really welcome the opportunity to work for you guys. And if y'all have any questions, I'll be glad to answer.
Any questions? No?
All right.
Thank you very much. And Ms. Kilgore, our last one.
Ms. Peggy Wardlaw with Wardlaw and Associates.
Good evening. Thank you.
Oh, hi. How are y'all doing? It's been already a long night. So, I'm Peggy Wardlaw with Wardlaw Appraisal Group. I'm the founder and partner of Wardlaw Appraisal Group. I'm a registered professional engineer and a registered professional appraiser. This is Proctor Sherwin. He's one of our registered professional appraisers, and he's going to do the great task of passing out a couple of handouts. I'm not going to go through the whole thing tonight because I know you wanted just a very short presentation, but I wanted to hand it to you just to have, so you can have something to refer to. I think most of y'all met Mallory Crane, who's also a registered professional appraiser at your last meeting, who kind of went over this past tax year. So Proctor's another one of our appraisers that does work in El Paso County. We've been doing the appraisals in El Paso County for the past 4 years. El Paso County is our priority. It is a high priority, and it will continue to be the case if you award us the contract additionally. We believe that reducing the workload of the appraisal district and reducing complications is one of the most important things that we bring. That we need to work with your appraisal district and with your staff in such a coordinated way so that we're just a well-oiled machine. We establish and maintain, when we first got, the first thing I did after we were awarded the contract 4 years ago is called who? Western Refining. That was your big problem. Called them up, called up their tax rep and said, hey, we're a new company. Let's sit down and talk. So we did. We had a good working relationship with them, and I really thought that first year we would be able to reach an agreement. We were not. But we maintained a good working relationship with them, and we were able, over time, and I will get into this a little bit later when we'll talk a little bit more about Western Refining, but I'm kind of getting off topic here. So we have worked and exceeded El Paso County expectations, and that's our goal, is to always exceed the expectations of any appraisal districts that we work with. On page 3, I'd just like to go over a few of these key facts. We have our own in-house developed appraisal application. Again, it does capital told about all these fancy things that you can do online, and we have many of those things online. We have a GIS system. We work really closely with El Paso County to give them electronic values that are imported electronically, so there's not any problems with them being wrong or with time to input those. All of our appraisers in El Paso County have the highest designation of registered professional appraiser in their field, and everybody stays right up to date on the rules, regulations, and appraisal methodology that are required and change all the time from the state, from the IAAO, and from PTAD. In addition, we're not required to, but we perform inspections on all the properties, large and small, that we appraise. And because we went out of our way from the very beginning to establish these relationships with the taxpayer and the taxpayer representatives, we've been able to inspect properties that they say have never been inspected before. So we've been given access to those properties because we have worked with the agents and with the tax reps in such an open way that we've been able to do those inspections. And in addition, the main thing we've gotten from that relationship is they give us information early. We don't just depend on their rendition. They give us information on their operating accounts and everything to allow us to do better appraisals and more consistent and uniform appraisals. For example, with the hospitals, our hospital values the first year went up significantly because we didn't just take their rendition. We studied how much do things cost, these particular types of equipment. We did inspections. We had hospitals that maybe didn't report that or a clinic that didn't report that they had an MRI machine. And because we went into the facility and talked to them, they said, oh, we have an MRI machine here, and we have this machine here and that machine there. And we were able then to go back when we did our appraisals and say, hey, you didn't report this equipment that we saw on our inspection. So we think it's really important to do an in-depth job of appraisal. If you could go to, there's a little tab on the first tab. Let's see here. It's on page 9. So one of the things that this close relationship with getting information from the taxpayers and from the tax representatives has been, if you look on the bottom line of prior year's tax recap, you'll see that in the first year that we did the appraisal, 2015, we certified 92% of our notice value, which means that when our notices went out, we got so many protests and so much information in that we didn't have before the notice, that 8% of the value was gone, but you know, it was changed during the protest process. In 2018, this year, 97% of that value was certified. The reason for that is we, because of the way that we work, and we put a lot of effort into working values before notices, that tells you that when you give your estimates to your taxing entities, you're going to have a much better estimate because the notice value is going to be much closer to the certified value that you then use to set your tax rates. So we think that's a really important consideration. We devote a lot of time to that. We put a lot of appraisers to work on these accounts early so that we can get those notice values and get them right. Let me show you something else. On the next page, on the notices of appraised value. The year before we took over this account, your notices for El Paso County went out on May 30th and June 3rd. This year, we got all of the notices to El Paso County in batches because that's what the appraisal district asked us to do. They said, if you will send us batches of appraisals as you work them, it gives us time to review them, get them put in the system early, and get the notices out early. Because we're a small firm, we're able to customize what we do to the districts. So we were able to provide batches of notices to the appraisal district over time, with the last batch going out on May 11th. So almost 20 days early, we got your notices. We got your taxable values, all your taxable values in smaller batches to the El Paso Central Appraisal District. So those notices can start going out. They can be looked at, and we have time then to work the protest before the ARB hearing. So then the ARB hearings run really smoothly because we don't have a huge backlog of people trying to provide information to us that we haven't looked at just before, you know, in the few days of the ARB. We also have maintained or increased the market value in El Paso CAD. This year, the market value for the accounts we appraised went up $300 million. So we have each year increased our efficiency, our productivity, and our workflow, working closely with your staff. And I want to say this, I feel like El Paso CAD has one of the most professional, efficient staffs that I have ever seen in an appraisal district. And we work with a large number of appraisal districts. And we've worked really closely with them to keep them up to date on exactly what we're doing and how we're doing it, and providing the service in a way that it meshes with what the appraisal district staff is doing. So sometimes, for example, sometimes the appraisal district staff will go with us on an inspection because they want to do the building. So when we set the inspection up in their buildings, they hadn't been able to go into, I believe, at times. And because we were able to set the inspection up to inspect the personal property, they were able to do a walkthrough of the building on the inside and do a better job of appraising the real property as well. If you'll go on and turn to page 11, you'll see certified values by entity. I'm not going to go through that step by step, but you can see, I know some of you are from some of the smaller school districts, and you can see that for every single district, the values have gone up. As a matter of fact, since 2014, which is the last year that Capital had the contract, the values have gone up $900 million. And the number of lawsuits has gone down. So I would like to talk about your two big accounts, El Paso Electric and Western Refining. And any questions you have about Western Refining, I would love to answer, because for the last 4 years, I have immersed myself in the details of Western Refining. But let's start with El Paso Electric. This year, El Paso Electric, just this year, every year the value has gone up significantly. This year, they signed a settlement and waiver with an increase in value of over $36 million. I believe over the 4 years we've done this, the value on El Paso Electric has gone up over $150 million with no lawsuits, because we have been able to get information from them. And the other thing we've done with El Paso Electric, we've streamlined the accounts. Originally, when we took over, there were a whole list of accounts that just had random legal descriptions. Some of them were $9,000 and would just say equipment. Some of them would be $350,000 and just say improvement. So there was no tie back between what an account represented and its value. So we have worked with the appraisal district and set up an account numbering system and the number of accounts so that each jurisdiction combination, because of course there are all these different jurisdiction combinations, has its own account number. And then we can see what is the investment in that group of jurisdictions. We also broke the generation accounts out separately, because generation accounts are appraised in a different manner, and they're very specific. We all know what the Montana plant is and the different generation plants. So those are in their separate account. That's what we've done to streamline and modernize the way that El Paso has been doing their big taxpayer. The state has said they may be putting El Paso Electric on the study this year. I heard somebody comment that 96% of their value is in El Paso County. That is not true. They own part of a nuclear plant in Arizona. Mostly it's in El Paso. I admit that. Most of it's in El Paso County. But there are significant parts of it that are in other states. And we know that. And we've been trying to figure out exactly what that is. Because in New Mexico, where they have some transmission and generation, they appraise it for property tax purposes once every 5 years.
Ms. Wardlaw, could you
sorry.
You need to finish.
Yes, thank you. Okay. So the second thing is just Western Refining. Western Refining settled their refinery value this year 8% higher than prior year. And overall, the value on Western Refining since we took over the account has gone up by 20.5%. Because we have taken an approach with Western Refining that we are going to do it right, but we're going to do it in a way that you don't have to have a settlement where the value goes from $740 million to $320 million. And we've been able to increase the value without a lawsuit. Thank you. I'm sorry I went on so long.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Are there any questions?
No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So that would take us to I guess, Ms. Kilgore, do you have any comments to make? We're going to need to make a decision on this evening, I believe, yes?
Yes, I would
Okay.
like for a decision to be made. The reason being is the appraisal firms do need to get started for the 2019. The contract is really begins in January of January 1st, but in their timetables, they all like to start a little bit early, setting up their appointments. But if we do need, if the board feels like you need more time, we definitely can come back to this. But they did come in from out of town. I did, in your backup, you saw a recommendation. I will say Ms. Foster is correct. She does come in through the Texas Association of Appraisal Districts, and she's taught our staff the law and rules every year. She's a great instructor, and we always have a good time with her. The other courses, though, we do teach, other than the two that require an attorney. We do teach in-house. Capital Appraisal was our appraisal firm, was our original appraisal firm all the way up to 2014. At that time, the board felt like we needed to see what else was out there. Wardlaw Associates did win the bid. I will say this, my recommendation is very difficult to switch over from one firm to another. They build up relationships with these large companies. We have had a very good relationship with Chip Toomey from Endeavor. Ms. Wardlaw and I have visited with him quite often. We were able to settle the 2017 and 2018. 18, we came up for value before the notices even went out. So we have developed a good relationship. And in 2016, we were able to settle the past lawsuits. My recommendation just for logistics, they are all highly qualified, as you heard. They all have very positive aspects. The nice thing, all of them have systems that can talk to ours, can be part of ours. We do our own notices here at the appraisal district. We do our own supplements. That is something we do here and always will do. We want to be able to do that for our taxing entities. That's our job. That's what we do. So my recommendation would be, because we have had such a good working relationship with Wardlaw, and just the logistics of changing to another one would be to stick with Wardlaw for another 3 years. But again, you heard the presentations, and any discussion or any questions you may have of the other companies.
So do we have a motion?
It's a
Yes, go ahead. Yes, sir.
3-year contract?
Yes.
Okay. How long was Capital Appraisal providing the services for the Central Appraisal?
They started in the 80s through 2014. I don't know exactly when in the 80s, but Greg, do you remember when in the 80s? 82, 83, yeah. Appraisal District came online in January 1 of, well, actually in 1981, and I believe by about 1982 or 83, Capital. So they were with us through 2014.
Yes, sir.
Can I ask a very simple question? How are these companies remunerated? By percentage?
Excuse me, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
How are they paid?
Oh, they're paid, we negotiate a contract, and then they're paid on a quarterly basis based on the contract. They are a professional service, and so once the firm is picked by the board due to their qualifications, then I'll sit down and work with them on a contract.
So specifically, where's that?
They're not contingent on their work, no, sir.
So it's a fee, basically.
It's not a fee base that if they get this much work done, they get paid so much, or if they get this one, not a loss. No, we're not allowed to do that by law, so it is a standard contract amount.
It would be the same for all three?
Yes. Well, it's whatever I do. Negotiate with them. Again, once you guys pick one, it's considered a service contract, and that will be something that we'll be dealing with them on.
Will you come back to us? Or is this decision final? Do you come back to us?
This decision would be final.
The price negotiation?
Right. This decision is final. The company that you're picking, because it is a professional service, you're picking them on their qualifications, and then we sit down and we negotiate a contract, and that's why probably so I'm asking the board for 3 years. We'll do a 3-year. The reason for 3 years is because we have reappraisals. We appraise all property every year, but every 3 years we must really look at everything, and so we like to do a 3-year cycle at the least amount of time. Doing a 1 year just does not work. A 1 year, we tried that before, and just as you're getting things done, we overlap too much. We're right now finishing up 2018. We're already working on 2019, and we still have lawsuits from 2016. So we work multiple years at one time. So the 3 year is about the most minimum that we would like to have on them. But they are paid a contract rate. They're not paid based on the amount of value that they increase. They cannot be paid on the amount of lawsuits they don't have. That's against the law on the property tax code. I cannot be paid by the board of directors based on how many notices we send out, how few lawsuits we have. We're not allowed to do that.
What can we expect the range of this cost to be?
Currently, the current budget is hold Let me look it up. I thought I had it written down. I believe it's 390. 390 is what's budgeted.
390,000?
390,000 is what's budgeted.
Is that per year?
That's per year.
Are there any areas currently that you'd like to see improvement as far as our relationship with Ward Law?
Nobody's perfect, but we've had a really good working relationship. One thing with Ward Law, they've included my staff out in their field visits. So my staff has been able to go out on field visits with them. The refinery, we have actually met with the refinery, with Chip Toomey from Endeavor in San Antonio, and Ms. Wardlaw visited before Endeavor bought it with West Refinery out in Arizona. So the biggest plus I like is that my staff is included now. We get reports, we get monthly reports. We know what values they're looking at before they do them, before they send them. We visit on the values. Are we comfortable with these? Do we have the right information? So the communication has been very open. That's not to say that the others would not either, but we have a very, very good working relationship and communication with Ward Law the last 4 years. That was something new for us.
So those were all positive things.
Positive
Is there anything that's not positive?
No, sir.
Not one thing.
I'll be honest with you, no. Maybe that she's a little long-winded.
That wasn't very polite. Brother snickered.
Yeah, I think personally, I think I was most impressed with Capital, but we parted ways prior to them. Can you speak to that just a little bit? Why was that?
The board of directors at the time decided they wanted to change. They didn't like the idea of having a appraisal firm for that length of time without bringing in another one. Again, qualifications were very good. We'd been with them. They just felt like they'd been with them too long, and they wanted to give another company a chance.
So relative to performance over the last 4 years versus the other 20 years, or in your opinion, it's been comparable?
Well, I'll be honest with you, and I love Capital Death. I like them all.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
we work with them constantly throughout the industry. We feel like we've had better communication on the appraisal level with Ward Law than we had with Capital. They would come in and go do their field work, and we were never included. We didn't always know what the numbers were until the last minute. They'd send a batch at the very end just as notices were going out. With getting them early, our staff has been able to look at the evaluations that the appraisal firm has given us and then call them back with questions saying, are you sure you want to do this? What's going on? Give us some more information so we have more time. That I have seen a change personally from Capital before. Capital is very qualified with the refinery, and you can't say one firm is better than another because of the lawsuits, because refineries, large companies always will file a lawsuit. That's just the nature of the beast. But we have, the last 2 years, have been able to work without a lawsuit. Now, in prior years, Capital was able to work, John Neely, who's a principal partner there, was able to work with Chevron when it was Chevron before it was West Refinery, and we didn't have lawsuits. We had one big lawsuit that we took to court with Chevron and beat. Mr. Longotti remembers that one. Yes. But other than that,
Mr. Velarde, did you have a question?
Well, and actually, I'm just going to make a comment, just regarding the process. And so, I mean, I'm going to speak for myself, but I'm going to guess. I'm speaking for more than just myself, but when it comes to truly understanding what's going into this, I mean, your recommendation is absolutely important, because I don't know that any one of us have the true capacity in here to dig down deep and decide which is the best firm and which is not the best firm, because I certainly don't know what goes into appraisals. So in my comment, do you develop, when you evaluate the proposals, do you develop a ranking system of any sort? Do you have a check system of any sort that is objective, that could be presented to us in the future versus?
It's hard to do because it's not a quantified type of a report. It's not, we'll do X amount of appraisals, we'll do so much value changes, because we're not allowed to do that. What we do is we look at the qualifications. Do they meet all the qualifications? We look at who all they represent. Capital represents the most clients. Hugh Landrum and Wardlaw don't have the large number that Capital does, but sometimes that's really good. I like being a big fish in a small pond. You know, I like being the number one. They take care of us. So we look at things like that. What are the qualifications? What are the degrees that they have? The PEs that they have, the RPAs that they have, what kind of staff that they have. So it's basically qualifications that they all have. They've been in this business since appraisal districts, well, before appraisal districts, back when every taxing entity did their own thing. Capital, I believe, is the oldest group at the time now. So it's hard because they are so very equal in their qualifications and in what they do for their clients. It's more of what have we seen in the last 4 years, the logistics of changing over to another company at this time. Having Capital for so many years, it wouldn't be that hard. Hugh Landrum is new out to this area. They're trying to expand. So, you know, my recommendation is going by what we've seen the last 4 years.
All right, and I'll just finish off the comment in that I know that what I'm used to doing based on my board, and I don't know, Mike, if you do it at Sleta or Vincent, if you do it at county commissioners, when you're evaluating a high dollar RFQ, since it's not principally price based. I know at EPISD what we're doing is we're authorizing, and Laura, you kind of deal, we're authorizing a ranking to sit down and negotiate with. That's why I asked, is this the last time you come before us? Because the next step is you've got to negotiate the contract, and you know, if the contract comes out beyond our budget or way too high.
I mean, what we've budgeted for is what we've got.
Sure.
And I'm sure she can work with, am I correct in speaking for you? You work within that
I
budget
don't believe
too.
right.
It's just a comment.
Yeah, it's just the differences in entities is my experience.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
You know, having El Paso Electric and Marathon that we're going to contend with, I'm very curious to see what kind of attitude Marathon brings to the table, as opposed to when, now, I'm a newcomer to the board, so to speak, and there was a difference between the Western Refinery and
Endeavor, Tesoro, they changed Endeavor.
Yeah. And I'm just curious if somebody could comment about their attitude.
Well, I can tell you, Ms. Wardlaw and I have been in contact with Chip Toomey. They're not exactly sure what's going to happen because it's not final until October, and then, of course, it has to be approved by the government, and then it has to go before the stockholders. Mr. Toomey has told us he does not think it's going to change the relationship that we have, but he doesn't know for sure. Anytime you have a changeover, you're not sure if they're going to bring in new people or if they're going to keep the existing. So we're all up in the air with that.
But they have a philosophy that they run by. These guys have been doing it for a long time. This is not the first time.
Mr. Toomey told us that he felt like it was going to be fairly close to the same philosophy that they had with Endeavor. Now, that's coming from Mr. Toomey, who's in charge of the assets and the valuations of the properties throughout Alaska and, you know, all the properties that they have on the West Coast.
One last comment. And the other day I was driving to L.A. and I saw that nuclear power plant. And I went way back when, and I remember distinctly the taxation that Arizona got initially was something like in the neighborhood of $10 million. And at that time, our rates were modified, so to speak. And I was curious, they don't bring that up anymore. Then it was a big deal. We were part of the nuclear plant. Now it seems that El Paso Electric has the right to do whatever they want on a yearly basis, power plant or no power plant. And I'm just curious to see what kind of impact does that power plant, when you say you're providing an increase of $36 million, well, what those guys are worth, this is peanuts.
Right. No, we're not allowed to appraise them on their, what would you call them, their financials. We're only allowed to appraise them on the property that they own in El Paso County. So I can't take the power plant into consideration. Yeah, we have to subtract out that financial part of it and just appraise them on the
I know
property.
one thing, that in our district, they're taking us to the cleaners.
Yeah.
Oh.
Same with you, and same with you.
You can get online and see our bills so you can see how high they are.
Anyway, that was just a personal jab.
Yeah,
I
so-
remember those days with Palo Verde, Mr. Rosales, I do.
It was better in Canton.
Oh, mm-hmm. So do we have a motion?
I would just say one last comment.
Yes, sir.
Real quick. Just as a business perspective, I wouldn't want comfort to get in the way of the best. I see the benefits to continuity, but I agree with Al. After 3 10-minute presentations, I don't know that I can say one way or another. I believe I think that I would imagine or hope that you've spent considerably
Yes.
more time than that evaluating the situation. So I appreciate that.
And we did, and if we were to rate them, I would probably rate them with Ward Law, Capital, and Hugh Landrum, just a little bit, Ward Law a little bit higher than Capital, a little bit higher than Hugh Landrum, so.
I make a motion to go with the recommendation.
Thank you.
I had a quick question. I'm sorry, how many refineries does Ward Law have in their portfolio?
13.
This is our first refinery, but we have we work with a man named Jim Watson who does, and we've been able to establish a value that stuck, that they agreed with and settled with. And because you have equal and uniform things, what you do. You do an appraisal and then you do equal and uniform. And so we've been able to work with them and establish a good equal and uniform price that they were able to agree with. And we've been able to raise the value from 320 million to 385.
Capital had 13 of the 22 refineries that they appraise.
So we've got a motion on the floor from Mr. Velarde. Is there a second? I'll second. Motion made and seconded for, Ward Law to receive the appraisal services for the district. All in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
And the motion passes 5-1. Thank you. Next,
If I may thank everybody, we really appreciate it.
yes, thank you all for coming. We appreciate you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item will be agenda item 9, the chief appraiser report. Ms. Kilgore, that's you.
That's me, and I'm going to try and keep it small. I just need to let y'all know of a few things that are going on because I want Mr. Longoria to have time to visit. One of the things I needed to let you know is Albert Molina and I are visiting with the senator and the representatives for the state of Texas. We've already visited with the senator first week of October. We have appointments with the others. This is getting ready for the 86th legislative session coming up. We've already got a few things that we're visiting with them on through the state organizations that we are, some of the things that they're going to be looking at. There was a gentleman by the name of Hugh Shine, who's a representative out of Temple, who's already met committee-wise on this, and what they're looking at is ARB CAD separations, and I mean physical, like another building, to move all of the appraisal review board hearings. They're looking at disaster exemptions, fixing those disaster exemptions. Right now, if a disaster happens and it's not January 1, it happens, say, February 1, the value as of January 1 is what stays for the entire year. So they're looking at some exemptions and some different timelines on those. Truth in taxation transparency, that would be part of the tax collectors. And then, of course, ARB reform and transparency, and that would be more training and more qualifications for ARB members. That's just an initial that we've seen, but we are going out visiting with legislatures. We'll be visiting, with, of course, with our local organizations, state organizations, and I'll bring you guys up to date on what we're seeing. There's still elections in November, so the committees are just kind of having soft meetings right now, but once it gets starting the day after, I believe it's November 7th, they can start submitting bills. So we'll be getting a report pretty much daily from our organizations as to what's going on. But I wanted to let you know we were already ahead of it with visiting them. Our appraisers are out in the field. If anybody calls you and said, what is this person doing out here? They're allowed to be out there. They're out there measuring. They're out there picking up new improvements. They're out there talking to property owners. We did meet with the Board of Realtors and the MLS group. We've met with them twice. it's kind of in their court now as to what they want to do. They were going to visit to see if there was a way that we could become a member and get information from them. We'll see what happens. We're kind of staying on top of that.
Thank you for doing that, by the way.
Oh, well, we've done it before, and it
Right.
just kind of, so this time we met with a smaller group, and then we met with a few more people, and they've said, okay, let us now talk to our group, and we'll get back to you. So we'll see. We had a couple of folks that we visited with that were very, why not? It helps us by giving you access, and then we had some that are like, oh, no way. Why would we give you that information? You're going to take our sales from us. We have nothing to do with selling of the homes, but they felt like we were going to be taking away what they do. So we just need to work with them a little bit more. It may not happen this year, but we'll keep working with them. I think we're getting a little bit of a change there. So the tax bills, just to let you guys know, they're supposed to go out around October 10th. We are submitting all of our data to them Monday. They will have any changes from when we certified on July 25th to now, so all of that will be in there. But EPISD and Tornillo ISD and Clint have things that are going to be on the ballot. So some tax bills may not go out until after the election. But if anybody has anyone that asks them anything about it, just don't call us. Call the tax office. We'll be happy to help them. The announcement for appraisal review board members was in the El Paso Times and the El Paso Inc. We don't have a report from the liaison officer, but Tracy Carter is here. If you guys have any questions during my report, she can answer. She is visiting with the judge on pretty much a daily basis. As the applications come in, she visits with the applicants. If they come in to see what's going on, shows them around, explains to them what it's all about, and then she takes the applications to the judge. The judge will start setting up appointments to interview them through the month of October. And then we'll get a list from the judge probably by the end of October. So at our November meeting, you will be able to pick from a secretary and a chairman of the Appraisal Review Board. Classes, like Ms. Foster had said, our classes are already ongoing. We've had several classes already, and we have several more scheduled. And we're including some IAAO classes, which are international classes for some of our folks that are going for designations. And we also have people from Hudspeth, Presidio, attending our classes. We open it up to them. We give them a little bit of a discount rate because we know how hard it is on the smaller districts to have the funding. We have to have the class anyway, so they have to basically pay their fees that they have to the state. And to let you know, Mr. Taylor was not able to attend because he was ill, was just out of the hospital. So we sent, my staff sent flowers from the Appraisal Review Board, the Board of Directors, sorry, from the Board of Directors, myself, and staff.
Thank you.
So he should be getting those. And that's it, unless you have any questions of me or Ms. Carter. Oh, my understanding, in all of y'all's notebooks that we give you, there's a calendar timeline in all your notebooks. But my understanding is at the September meeting, y'all hadn't really seen them. So we updated the timeline, and we're going to pass it out. Be sure and put them in your books.
Thank you.
Believe it or not, we do give you lots of information. One of those things you read at night so you can go to sleep. You know. But we updated the timeline and added in some of the changes that has happened since they were in your notebook. All right, that's it.
I just have a comment for the record, and this is it's kind of stemmed from last month's meeting, and it stuck with me, Mr. Stone. I was kind of hammering on the analysis, what's the cost benefit here, the ROI, all this stuff, and this comment that appraisal districts just typically don't do that sort of thing because y'all are limited, by budgets and boards and whatever else. I would just strongly, I've been a little disappointed in the analysis of some of these items that we've been looking at because maybe it's just because I'm more prone to objective metrics and this is why and this is how and this is what we're going to see from it, maybe even from this system that we bought into to this appraisal group that we just approved and so I don't know and if there is an outlet or an area to even bring on a full-time analyst. I mean, I think I would be open to considering paying somebody $50,000 a year to analyze these things with this so that we could come up with the best. I think they would more than pay for themselves. And I'm not proposing that we look into it, but I'm just saying I think that I in my business I don't have a top-down budget, you know, like we do here, and so it's, I know you say we're tight and we can't afford it and everything else, but just as just from my point, just to you all, and I think that y'all do a great job, but that's just been one area that I think has been lacking from my perspective, is a thorough analysis, a thorough objective analysis on some items that are pretty high dollar.
That's something we can look at going into the budget for the 19, because the budget now is already done.
Yeah.
But the 19-20 year, we can come up with maybe some analysis and recommendations and bring to the board later.
And possibly Mr. Lowenfield like to be on the budget committee.
Okay.
Never mind.
Deal breaker.
You know, when you say something, you better watch it.
I would be very interested too, because you're echoing a lot of my sentiments as far as it's not about the quality that's going on now. It's not about the qualifications of what's going on now. I think you guys do a fantastic job with what you're given, but we can always do better. And I think that is one area where there's room for improvement.
We can definitely, and one of the things we do in March is we give a really nice presentation about where we are, what we've done out in the field, what our numbers are. We do that like once a year to show you as we're going into the next evaluation process, to try to give you guys, we'll do statistics, we'll give you our coefficient of dispersion of where we are in values. We can kind of maybe do the same thing administratively and do a report about where we are administratively and have that for you. But it is definitely, we need to expand. We're different. We're not a government entity. We're not a private business. We're kind of a hybrid. And we're very restricted by the property tax code on what we can do and can't do and what we're allowed to say and not say. And so, but definitely, we can look at all your...
Am I hearing you correctly? But what you're asking for is an analytical response to some of the issues that come up on the high dollar item. Am I correct?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. Not so much as this is where we're at on the daily. As these issues come, I think, and I agree with him, we come in here and try and make decisions, but we don't have the proper analysis of the impact, so to speak.
And some things we can do that on, some things it's going to be hard, but we can come up with maybe synopsis or scenarios or something that would give you, that. Yeah, we'll work on that.
Well,
we'll
if you want two examples that just to kind of think through, one would be this one. Even whenever the company was here and I was asking or we were asking what costs, what cost savings. You say we're going to have all these cost savings. What are they? Well, I don't know. They're it's going to help streamline stuff. Okay, what does that equate to? And what is that? And so we're investing this many dollars. How many dollars you apply to the rate? And there's people that I have to do this all the time, and every business has to do this sort of analysis on that, or on even with choosing the appraiser tonight. I don't know all of the backstory and all of the investigations and everything and conversations that you all had, but from my perspective, even on the one point of Capital having 13 of 22 refineries in Texas, and this is their only one, it brings up a concern, like what kind of analysis, or I guess just tell me, what was the analysis, what were some of the, and I'm not really asking for you to tell me right now, because as this is done, that's in the past, but what was the analysis that went into it, other than, we've had them for a while and it's comfortable. So those are kind of the examples that I'm thinking of. More of a, what would help me personally is more of an objective analysis that we could determine, okay, that makes sense.
And that's what I mean, that would be our Capital of all the years that we're here. We had so many years that were under lawsuits with the refinery. I don't mean to bring that up again because that's
just an example. Yeah.
But yeah, no, I see where you're going, and we see what we can do to.
And I think that kind of goes to my point in the analysis of this thing, because I have to say it put me in a position that I don't really feel comfortable, because these are great presentations. It's nice to hear them, but I don't have a clue to be able to make a choice amongst those three, because I don't have that expertise. So if an analysis of a procurement is conducted where we do set up what our qualifications are, what our guidelines are, and you give us a ranked proposal that we can then take a look at, and what we have is an objective document that tells us this is how you came to your conclusion. And I get it, they can be difficult to be to develop, but I have to say that in a litigation, if somebody decides to say, you know what, I don't think the process was fair, what do we have to back up this selection other than the agenda item that says that it's recommended? And so that's why I felt uncomfortable. But in the end, that's all I had. That's all I had because I'm not the expert in.
That's why you hire me.
And I do, but yeah, the documentation
Because we
to
come and
me
go.
to give us an objective opinion, it would be mine, and that's why I made the comment.
So, Ms.
Can we
Kilgore,
get
what I'm
into-
hearing is there's just a style change. You're giving us the right information. Just change up the style, make it a little more
I did make
performance.
recommendations.
You did,
I was
okay.
told to make
Yeah.
recommendations.
And I like
so-
that. I guess my point would be,
Give you a
I
little
think
more
for
data.
you personally, I think if you were a little bit more analytical or surrounded yourself with people that were more that way or communicated that if you are doing that in a different way that made sense to us, then maybe that would help.
We can do that, but I would like, because we are running out of time, and I do want to have Mr. Longoria talk to you about what we're
Okay.
seeing. So
Then
we need to
let's-
go into executive session, Ms. Earl?
Well, yeah, we'll move to agenda item number 10, and I'd like to adjourn into executive session under Texas Government Code number 551.071 and 551.074.
What time is it?
And the time is, I'm sorry, 7:03.
Yeah.
And those are things.
Yeah.
When you run a business, you have to do that all the
yeah,
time.
yeah.
Those are sticking to me, I'm sweating so
Yeah,
bad.
actually, I'm not really concerned about that.
Repeat that to anybody.
to open session. Under agenda item number 11, it is 8:47. Or no, actually, it's 7:47. I'm sorry. 7:47 p.m. And that would take us to agenda item number 11. Discussion and possible action regarding A is listed in the previous item. And I don't believe we have any action on that.
No, ma'am.
And so I would like to move to reconsider agenda item 6. Discussion and possible action regarding a resolution to encumber funds for litigation reserve. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Commissioner Paris. So I made the motion. It was seconded by Commissioner Pettis, and we will reconsider the motion that was made under agenda item 6. And that was to encumber funds for our litigation. Is there an amendment to?
I think there has to be a vote on to reconsider.
Oh, okay. All in favor of reconsidering? Thank you. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes.
Madam Chair, on this item, I move to appropriate, was it 300,000?
Total of 5.
So
Okay.
the additional, a total of 500,000 of an available funds to the litigation reserve and to encumber the funds.
So we have a motion, an amended motion,
Second.
and a second. Commissioner Pettis has amended the motion. We've got a second by Mr. Velarde to encumber funds for litigation reserve of $500,000. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes. Thank you very much, Board. And with that, thank you, Ms. Kilgore and staff. Meeting is adjourned. And the time is 7:50.
Thank you, board members.
Very good. Thank you.